Mr. Chair, council members and participants, we are now live.
Thank you very much. I understand that the state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, city council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember David O.
All right, good morning. I am president. Thank you.
Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Good morning. I am present as well.
Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues.
Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Good morning, present.
And Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Rules regarding bills number 200-713, 210081, 210204, 210225, 210362, and 210425. Will the clerk please read the titles of the bills?
Bill number 200713, to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Lehigh Avenue, Frankford Avenue, Master Street, and 6th Street. Bill number 210081, amending Chapter 9-3900 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Property License and Owner Accountability, Section A-906, entitled Property License Fees, Chapter 14-604, entitled Accessory Uses and Structures, and Chapter 19-2400, entitled Hotel Room Rental Tax, to add and revise provisions related to the use of properties for limited lodging and hotel purposes, and to the collection of hotel rental taxes in connection therewith, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210204, to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Cottman Avenue, Milnor Street, Princeton Avenue, and the Delaware River. Bill number 210225, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Zoning and Planning, by amending Section 14-502, entitled Center City Overlay District, by establishing and adding a new sub-area within the Broad Street area, entitled South Broad Street Gateway, and making related changes all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210362, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Zoning and Planning, by amending certain provisions of Section 14-502, entitled Center City Overlay District, to create the Mid-Walnut Street area, all under certain terms and conditions. And finally, Bill number 210425, amending Chapter 14-500 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Overlay Zoning Districts, by revising certain provisions of Section 14-514, entitled Far Northeast Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you very much, Brett. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before we begin, I want to state for the record that Bill number 200713 will have no additional testimony today besides what this committee had heard at the April 19th hearing. Due to a technical error, the amended maps were unable to be distributed prior to the hearing. The amended maps have now been circulated to all members. Also, before we begin, I wanted to announce that Bill number 210225 will be held until the next rules hearing on June the 15th. Please let the record reflect that Bill number 210225 is being held at the request of the sponsor and will be heard at a later date. Will the clerk please call the panel for Bill number 210425?
Paula Brumblow Burns.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. I am Paula Brumblow Burns, City Planner with the legislative team of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210425, which was introduced into City Council on May 6, 2021 by Councilmember O'Neill. Bill number 210425 will amend Chapter 14-500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by revising certain provisions of Section 14-514 entitled Far Northeast Overlay District, all under certain terms and conditions. This bill will convert every use allowed with a special exception in every zoning district within the overlay into a prohibited use. This includes over 30 uses in over 20 zoning districts, including many that are necessary to maintain a healthy family and protect vulnerable populations. Examples include hospitals, libraries, child care centers, personal care homes, reentry facilities, active recreation, and funeral services. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210425 at its meeting of May 20th, 2021, and did not recommend it for approval. The commissioners found that the bill was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and could not find any other adopted plans to support this bill. This bill may also raise issues related to the Federal Fair Housing Act and Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Person Act. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Councilman O'Neill, would you like to speak on your bill?
Sure. This bill actually is protecting neighborhoods, and to explain special exceptions and how unfair they are to the little guy living in a highly dense neighborhood with little parking, and just about making it every day. These are the people I'm trying to protect. When we say special exception and the zoning notice goes up, people have every right to believe when they're going to the zoning board that they have a chance of winning. That it's a case where they have to show their opposition, the applicant has to prove the hardship, and the zoning board decides. With a special exception, they're allowable uses that go to the zoning board. And the community has to prove. The applicant is silent, doesn't have to say a word. The community has to prove to the zoning board that this is harmful to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. If something's going to the zoning board, my experience is it should be a variance. It's not something that neighbors are going to want any more than a regular variance without meeting with the applicant, without finding out more about it, and feeling this process is working for them. And I just ask you, after decades of dealing with these issues, that special exceptions, I believe, should be out of the code, but I believe they should be because they're misleading and they're unfair. To give you an example, committee members, there are many residential districts. There are only 3 that have single homes on them as part of what is allowed. And the lots vary. The biggest is 75-foot lots, frontage, 10,000 square foot lots, sometimes referred to by people in the zoning and land use business as Chestnut Hill zoning. Then the lots get smaller, but the smallest one is a 50-foot lot, and it has 5,000 square feet. So there's three, and then there's one in the middle. It's like 7,000 square feet approximately, with 60 or 65-foot frontages. It just so happens, and this goes back to the beginning of the zoning code in the 30s, that there are no special exceptions in those areas, except they recently added, when the zoning code was done, community gardens. Nobody's quite sure what that means. It means you can grow food if you give it away. I already had a person who wanted to run a business and thought he could because it said community garden. But there are no other special exceptions. The special exceptions are all in the no parking, can't find a parking spot. Some people don't even park in the one in my district, in the one spot they have in front of their garage door. They park on the street because they don't want the oil to spill on the concrete. And recently, I had a case that was a corner home. We call them row ranchers. There are not that many of them, but there's a lot of twin ranchers in my district. But some of them are row ranchers. They're attached all the way down the block, and they're just 2 stories, 2 bedrooms usually, 1.5 baths, and then the downstairs is a garage and a bonus room in the back, and then a laundry room. A lot of people take the garage door out to create more space downstairs, sometimes add a bedroom. And there was a corner property, and there was an applicant who wanted, this is a block from a shopping center with empty stores, vacant stores. And she wanted to run a spa, doing facials and other things, and developing a lot of traffic and turning her property into a commercial property. Well, one of the things that's in special exception area is personal care homes. And they didn't exist in the code before the new code came out. And in talking to L&I said, this whole thing is vague. We're calling this a special exception rather than a variance because we think it might come under the personal care home. She's in her home, she's providing personal care, and I had hundreds of neighbors that couldn't believe what I was telling them, that we were going down to the zoning board, and we were going to have to explain how this was going to ruin our neighborhood. I mean, to the point where somebody's going to judge, and believe me, there is a serious legal issue with the burden of harmful to the health, welfare, and safety of the neighborhood, which is the burden on the community, otherwise presumed legal use, because it's very, very subjective. When you go in on a variance, there's a clear-cut hardship burden on the applicant. And so I just asked the board the committee to support me on this. This is not, they don't come up a lot, but when they do come up, they're major matters that people are really helpless with. And it's not those people in those big single homes. It's the people that are just making it every day, trying to make it go. They can't afford appeals and all that kind of thing. And they just say, why? Why is this work against us instead of for us? And if there's an applicant with the money, and there often is, they can't compete because this can be turned over on appeal because either way, or supported on appeal, because two people are going to have a totally different opinion as to what is harmful to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. And I represent the people that are in the weakest position there, and I want to give them a stronger position. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman O'Neill. And knowing you, I know you've done your homework and most importantly, advocating on behalf of your constituents who don't have big-time lobbyists and lawyers working on their behalf, but most importantly, they have you as a councilman speaking and addressing their issues and their concerns. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
Councilmember Johnson, I have a question.
Councilwoman Maria Kiona Sanchez.
Yes, and I too understand that Councilmember O'Neill has done a lot of work in this space. I just want to get some clarity as it relates to the definition. You know, the Council President Clark has reinstated a new zoning commission. This issue of the definition of a special exemption, what work can be done in this space? I personally have an issue with us exempting an entire district from what Paula said was like 30 different things in terms of fairness around the distribution of services, right, that are citywide, and what that does to our work in trying to ensure equity and accessibility throughout the city. So is there something that we need to do legally on that definition of special exemption so that we're not creating these kind of scenarios?
If that question is for me, and I appreciate it, there really isn't anything legally you can do about it except make it need a variance instead of a special exception. I disagree with the Planning Commission. They disagree with me. I don't want to spend a half hour talking about how, you know, there may be a religious challenge. Well, guess what? On all the biggest lots in the city, I named them, 1, 2, and 3, 10,000 square feet, 7,000 square feet. Guess what's exempted? Not in the code, needs a variance, but in every other residential district is fine as a matter of right. Churches. Isn't that kind of backwards? That's the way it's been for almost 100 years. This code is set up to protect certain people, to make it easy for certain people. And what I'm trying to do is, I would do it for the whole city. I only represent one district. And I believe you and I may be co-chairing with the head of the Planning Commission, Eleanor Sharp, Councilwoman, and I will strongly advocate that special exceptions be taken out of the code completely. But right now, I just speak for my district, and this is protecting people, trying to keep my district from deteriorating, and there's some serious issues. And the last time we were together in the Rules Committee, Planning Commission mentioned that I had more immigrants in my district than any other. And you know what? Who preys on people that don't know their way around as much as people that were born here? Developers and opportunists that hire good lawyers. They know this code inside out, and they take advantage of it. And any way I can protect those people, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. I just, again, we are going to start that process, and I think in fairness, if there are things we got to clean up and everybody agrees, whether we agree with the Planning Commission or we definitely don't agree with the zoning board many, many times. My concern is from a citywide perspective, when we're looking at hospitals and other utilizations, this is the same conversation we could have around, the exemption of methadone clinics in certain districts, and then other districts get overburdened with these kind of uses. So I look forward to having that conversation as part of that zoning process, because,
Okay.
Equitable distribution of necessary residential services, resources, access is important. And while I always appreciate the idiosyncrasies of every neighborhood and people having a due process, which is I'm going to take this that you're in the spirit of giving people a due process that's fairer, or at least a little bit more balanced. I think it's important that
much fairer and much more balanced. Yes, it's a good.
I'm going to take it in. I'm going to take it in that spirit with all of the questions that we need to discuss. So I definitely don't want, and that's why I think this process of the Planning Commission looking at this terminology that is too discrete and allows way too much leeway should be part of the process, and I know special exemption falls on one of them. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments for members of the committee? Of course, seeing none.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hi, this is Councilwoman Bass.
Councilwoman Bass.
I just wanted to weigh in just a little bit as a district member of council, and a district like Councilwoman Sanchez and like Darrell Clark. I think the three of us, or Council President Clark, we have the highest number of residential facilities in our district and transient facilities in our districts. And so, recognizing that we need to have these particular types of services in our communities, and the folks that they serve is critically important, but also recognizing that there has to be some sharing of the responsibility across the city. I certainly recognize where Councilman O'Neill is going with this, and I support what he is attempting to do in the spirit in which he's attempting to do it. But I do think that it needs to be something that we do citywide. And also, I know that there was mention of a commission that is going to be studying this issue. I think that sometimes we take a little bit too long to do what is obvious and present right in front of us, and things that just kind of make sense. We study them, we look at them, we talk about them, and then it's 2 or 3 years down the pike before we actually move on them. So I'd like to just stand in support of what Councilman O'Neill is working towards, and that we move expeditiously to make sure that we find some solutions for these issues that are an issue throughout the entire city of Philadelphia. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? I'm hearing none. Will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210204?
Paula Brumblow Burns. Paula Brumblow Burns.
Paula, I know good morning everyone. Eleanor Sharp, Executive Director, Planning Commission. I know she's having some technical difficulties. Let me see, did we lose her? What was the bill numbers again? Sorry, I'll pull it.
210204.
Okay. I think we lost her, so I'll just present. Good morning, Councilman. Good morning, everyone. My name is not Paula Brumblow Burns. I am Eleanor Sharp, Executive Director of the City Planning Commission, and I will testify on bill number 210204, which was introduced into City Council on March 11, 2021 by Councilmember Heenan. Bill number 210204 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain portions of land located within an area bounded by Cottman Avenue, Milnor Street, Princeton Avenue, and the Delaware River. This bill, as presented to the City Planning Commission, originally remapped the former St. Vincent Orphans Asylum grounds from RSA 3, Residential Single Family Attached, to ICMX, Industrial Commercial Mixed Use. The bill, as introduced, kept with recommendations of the North Delaware District Plan that this portion of the Delaware waterfront be transitioned to a mixture of light industrial, office, and commercial/retail uses. This change would have allowed an existing use, the Quaker City Yacht Club, which is legally non-conforming under the current zoning designation to be permitted by right under ICMX. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210-204 at its meeting of April 8th, 2021, and voted to adopt the staff recommendation for approval. The amendment presented today now remaps the parcel to I-2 medium industrial, which would leave the Quaker City Yacht Club as a non-conforming use. While the Planning Commission did not weigh in on this amendment, it is contrary to the land use and historic preservation recommendations of the district plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Eleanor, and thank you for stepping up to the plate. On behalf of your colleague, teamwork make the dream work. I want to acknowledge the sponsor of the bill, Councilman Bobby Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
This redesignation of a site that was zoned many years ago as residential certainly was had very good intentions for residential use on the river. Unfortunately, the location where it's adjacent businesses on a very industrial utilized corridor on a very short period of road, has about 168 trucks that travel during the day. It has waste management, scrap metal, iron and steel, a recycling plant, and adjacent to the St. Vincent home is one of those very large and welcomed warehouse distribution centers for last mile. So sandwiched in between that is this little piece of land, and it's certainly conforming with the adjacent uses and the property and the businesses, as there are no residential houses or neighborhoods in the immediate area. So I thank you for your consideration. Thank you, Chairman, and look forward to the rest of the hearing.
Thank you very much. Any other questions and comments for members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210362?
If she was able to rejoin, we have Paula Brumblow Burns.
Hi, yes, I was able to rejoin. Hold on for just 1 second. Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. I am Paula Brumblow Burns, City Planner with the legislative team of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210362, which was introduced into City Council on April 22nd, 2021 by Councilmember Squilla. Bill number 210362 will amend Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Zoning and Planning, by amending Section 14-502, Center City Overlay District, by creating the Mid-Walnut Street area. The proposed bill will create a new subsection in the CTR Center City Overlay District in order to accommodate a project by ARD 1105 Walnut LLC that is located 1101 to 1107 Walnut Street. The bill proposes to reduce the parking requirements from 3 spaces for every 10 residential units to 1 space for every 7 units. The bill also proposes a reduction in loading in both size and being enclosed due to the location on a very small street. Finally, the applicant seeks to adjust the lot coverage of the property that is located above 65 feet in height from 75% of the lot to 95% of the lot. The applicant had a by right project but has worked in modifying the plan to address the flight pattern of helicopters for Jefferson Hospital. These modifications have created a project that cannot meet code compliance. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210362 at its meeting of May 20th, 2021, and recommended approval with amendments. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210081?
Sarah Adamo.
morning, Chairperson Johnson and members of the Committee on Rules. My name is Sarah Adamo, and I am the Legislative Affairs Manager for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Today, I am here to provide testimony on Bill number 210081, which was introduced by Councilmember Squilla. If enacted, the bill will amend Chapter 9-3900 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Property Licenses and Owner Accountability. Section A-906, entitled Property License Fees, Chapter 14-604, entitled Accessory Uses and Structures, and Chapter 19-2400, entitled Hotel Room Rental Tax, to add and revise provisions related to the use of properties for limited lodging and hotel purposes, and to the collection of hotel rental taxes. I am also joined by Paula Brumbelow Burns of the City Planning Commission. The administration is supportive of the bill as amended, with the Department of Licenses and Inspections prepared to enforce it should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the administration's testimony. We are happy to answer questions at this time.
Any questions and comments from members of the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Mark Squilla. I just wanted to thank L&I, Revenue, and Law for working with all the stakeholders on this bill. There's been a lot of back and forth, and we do have amendments that have been circulated, and adding another amendment to be circulated on this bill. And it's been a long work in progress, so I really appreciate the administration's efforts in working with us, along with the community groups and all the stakeholders. So I want to thank you for that, and hopefully if we have any questions, if Sarah can hang on there, I know there's a couple people to testify, she'll be able to answer them from an L&I enforcement perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Squilla.
Mr. Chair, real quickly, Councilmember Squilla, could you just very quickly, or I'll wait for Sarah, maybe she'll kind of explain the operationalizing of that. I think this is important. So I'll wait till after Sarah, and then I'll have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments from members of the committee? Okay. Just real quick, Councilman Sanchez, when you referred to Sarah before I move on to the next bill, do you want her to clarify?
Yeah, the operationalizing of how this is going to work. I know there's a lot of folks testifying. Because the council member has been working with folks and they've made some changes, it's sort of like, how is this going to work, right? So that people are clear about what it does and what it doesn't do. Some of the items being around personal data and some of the other pieces.
And so, before we go on to public comment for testimony, Sarah, do you want to respond?
Sure.
Clarify what the amendments were and just give us clarity on the questions that Councilman Sanchez just asked.
Sure. So there were a couple of amendments. First, I'll go over just the big picture of how this legislation will work and how the enforcement will work. It creates two separate licenses. One is for the limited lodging operator, and that would be the person who resides in the property and decides to rent it on a platform such as Airbnb or VRBO. And then the other license would be for the booking agent, and that would be, the Airbnb or any other similar type of booking agent. So those licenses will work kind of in a symbiotic relationship where you can't book your property unless you are booking with a booking agent, and a booking agent can't list a property unless it's licensed. And then, there are some built-in tools where LNLI will be able to audit this information if problems arise. But some of the biggest tools that will help us, with some of the problems that we've been seeing is that the operator license will be limited to properties where the primary resident resides there for more than half of a year. There was an amendment for the 10th district where the primary resident needs to be the owner of the property. So that's the only exception to that. Otherwise, it would just be somebody who lives in the property half the year. So the idea behind that is that this isn't a full-time rental. This isn't a business. It's somebody's home, and hopefully that person who's renting it cares about their home and cares about their neighborhood and any impact that this rental would have on their community. And also, you know, on their property. You don't want parties in your own home, I would assume. Also, the operator is required to list their license information in any advertisements, and that way it's very clear that what you're renting is a licensed property. It's not something that's flying under the radar. And then on the booking agent end of things, there was a amendment that in the previous version of the bill, we listed some things that the booking agent would be required to submit to the department on a regular basis, and that included the name, license number, street address, the length of the stay of each booking, all of that information. What we've done in the amendment is remove that and say that this would be established by regulation. So our goal is still to be able to obtain some of that information, and it may be on a regular basis, but it may also just be by audit. It would be ideal, I believe, to receive this on a regular basis. That would allow us to have the information at our fingertips when we receive complaints. But if not, we would still like the ability to audit properties, and if we were to receive a complaint, we could put out a request for information to all the booking agents and say, hey, we received a complaint about this property. Can you let us know if you've been booking it? If so, what was the frequency that was done? I believe those are the major amendments that were made. There were a couple of smaller things. Councilman, please chime in if I missed anything. There was also an amendment to remove, or if the booking agent is notified that they're listing a property that isn't licensed, it must be removed within 5 days. I think other than that covers most of the amendments.
Yes, and also that I think the clarity in the new amendment coming forth is that if that they're not being liable for people whose license had expired or misrepresented. Once they're notified, they have 5 days to remove it, or the operator has 5 business days to comply, which means go to Atlas and just get a license. Therefore, the liability, once we notify them, would be on them to make sure the operator gets their proper license or is removed from the platform. That was something that we wanted to make sure was clear for both the operator and the booking agent. And is that what you understand too, correct, Sarah?
Yes, that is correct.
Chairman, I want to thank Councilmember Squilla for taking feedback and some of the suggestions and working through this. I really appreciate it. This was not my issue, although I have 3 on my block and not always welcomed. But I do appreciate him, taking some of the feedback and some of the suggestions and working through the operationalizing. So thank you, Councilmember Squilla and Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, I also want to just acknowledge the hard work that Councilman Squilla put in this. I mean, we're not trying to hurt any type of industry. We understand the business environment, but also as individuals who live in their homes, and primarily row homes, right? Residential communities. And, I've had complaints because of the parties, the trash being put out on the block after the parties, and then to be quite frank, with just the overall unruliness of individuals who take advantage of these situations via there was a shooting in Point Breeze on the 2000 block of Titan Street. Some guys from out of town And some things got out of hand. There was a shootout, and so I know for a fact that my constituents are up in arms and really want some level of control and regulation in this particular industry. And so I do thank Councilman Squilla for stepping up to the plate and addressing it. And so any homeowner here understands the dynamics of dealing with these types of properties and how they operate, to be quite frank with you. And so until it's on your block, on your immediate neighborhood, you may look at it one way, but when it's next door to you or in your immediate neighborhood or on your block, then you may begin to look at it a little differently. So again, thank you, Councilman Mark Squilla. I just want to acknowledge Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I apologize. The chat feature is not working for me at all. But I also wanted to thank and commend our colleague, Councilmember Squilla, for his hard work on this bill. I know that we received outreach from a number of community organizations regarding this. And at the original introduction of this bill, we were actually dealing with this in our local RCO regarding a number of short-term rentals that were seeking to come into compliance with all of the city rules and regulations. So first wanted to start by saying thank you. And I listened to you, Sarah, regarding, the bill requiring platforms to remove the operators within 5 days, if it's discovered that, any information is incorrect. I guess regarding their interface with the city and their ability to actually have a short-term rental. My question is how, it seems reactive. How do we find out that information? Meaning someone would report that information and then within 5 days, the platform would need to remove or ensure that that party is removed from their platform. Is there any clarification that you think would be needed, particularly, for instance, if there is an issue like the shooting that happened in Point Breeze? Say, for instance, in that circumstance, the platform was not aware that the information that the individual provided was incorrect. So what then happens in that case?
Thank you for the question. There are a couple of different ways that this could come across our radar. Most often, it would probably be from a complaint. It would be from, a neighbor saying there's parties at this house, there's different people there every night, what's going on? But it also could be from our own investigation of our own data. So the way that the bill works is that the booking agent will not be able to book a property unless it is licensed at some point. So that means that, maybe their license expired, and that's information that L&I has at our fingertips. We know when every license expires. So if there is an incident or we get a complaint and we see they had a license, but it expired a month ago, they're most likely on this platform and shouldn't be. In that case, we would contact the booking agent and ask them to remove it, or, in that time, the operator could renew their license as well. But, to answer your question, most of the time it is going to be from a complaint, but we do have some information that we can work within, our platform to understand when licenses have expired and kind of look into those as well.
Sure. And then my other question to that, and this is an issue, like I said, that we have been dealing with the local RCO around the same time that this bill first came up, was that these properties were already on the online platform, but they lacked the proper licenses and permits from the city, right? And so they were seeking to get that information going through the RCO process, and going through zoning, but, as of now have not been approved, but are still on the online platform. So is there any way under the Eclipse system to figure out if it's a property on one of these platforms that lacks the licensure? Is there like a cross check if a property is going through the zoning process or, sort of going through the RCO process?
There wouldn't be a cross check necessarily. However, that's where the reporting information comes into play. So the information that we'll be requesting from the booking agents will help us to understand whether it's a property that's already been listed or not. So that's where our ability to potentially, audit and request that information from booking agents is very important.
Okay, and I mean from a city perspective, meaning if we know a property is going through the process or it's been sent, through zoning to the RCO process, if we could just double check that they're not on the, like, how would we know? We don't, right?
Right. We would only know if we requested that information. And that is a very good point of, we want to understand whether somebody's going through this process the right way, or, if they're trying to legalize something that they've already done without the proper licenses and permits.
Got it. And then my very last question is regarding the new permit that will be created and estimated revenues.
So that's an interesting point. So the booking agent license is, the initial license fee is $7,000, and then the annual renewal is $5,000. So that would apply to any third-party booking agency. And then the operator license is $150, and that is both the initial and renewal fee. What makes this interesting is, I don't think that we can use the data that's available about how many properties are listed online right now as a reflection of how many we can expect to see. Because a lot of the properties that are listed right now are not owner occupied, are not occupied by a primary resident. So they're not actually what we would consider limited lodging. So I don't think that we can actually use that as a way to project revenue. But the way that these fees were structured is that it really covers L&I's administration costs and then enforcement costs. So it's not necessarily to bring in revenue, but instead to just cover the costs that we would incur to manage this program.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you again, Councilmember Squilla, for your work.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? To the sponsor of the bill, Councilman Mark Squilla, I know you have an amendment. Do you want to just give everyone an overview of the amendment?
Yeah, the amendment, the one amendment that was circulated earlier this morning, the only addition to the amendment is the onus of the booking agent to not be liable for the 5 business days of a invalid admission to a license. So if the license had expired, the booking agent would have 5 days to either remove the operator from their platform, or the operator would have 5 business days to go onto Atlas and renew their license, and therefore make them compliant. So that is the only new amendment that would be added from the amendment we put in this morning.
Thank you very much, Councilman Squilla. Is anyone else here to testify on this bill whose name has not yet been called? Hearing none at this time, the committee will take a brief pause to allow members of the public who have registered for public comment on this particular bill to join us for this virtual meeting.
Thank you for calling Philadelphia.
Background. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, council members, and participants, we are now live.
You will now hear the testimony that have signed up for public comment. Clerk will call your name, and once called, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. The clerk will call the first witness.
Brett Feldman, commenting on Bill 210362.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. I represent, I'm testifying here on Bill 2106 on behalf of the and proposed developers, and I just wanted to express our appreciation to all the different stakeholders on this project. This has been a nearly 2-year collaborative process, as explained from we had a by rights project, but for a number of reasons decided to go back to the table with the council person, near neighbors, city planning, streets department, RCOs, and fashioned this bill and our project to meet the various needs and concerns of all those different stakeholders. Also, as Ms. Brumbelow stated, the relief that we're seeking in this bill is because there's basically simply no way to satisfy the underlying code provisions. So in terms of parking, in terms of loading, and that's what brings us to this bill today. So with that, I would conclude my testimony and ask that the committee vote to approve this bill and suspend the rules. And again, express our appreciation to all the different stakeholders who've been part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Nicole Dress, commenting on Bill number 210362.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nicole Dress. I am an architect with JKRP Architects. I am listed for 210362, and I don't have any testimony per se. I was on the call in case there were any technical questions about the specifics of the bill, and if there are none, then I am finished.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Nadia Billig Daniel, commenting on 210081.
Hello, good morning, council members. Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Bill 210081. I live in Fairmount, my husband and 3 kids. We've lived here since 2001. In 2015, we purchased a 2-story home a few blocks away from my parents when they come to visit us from Florida. And the only way to keep this home financially is to put it on the temporary housing market. I say temporary, not short-term, since we only rent greater than 30 days. I wanted the council members to understand that the Airbnb market in Fairmount, certainly, where we are, is highly regulated and taken care of with our neighbors. I know the neighbors at my property. And I spent hours yesterday going through the bill, the website, to understand the differences between the term short-term, limited lodging. And my questions are as follows. And I think I sent this document to Brett. Hopefully all of you have a copy of it in front of you. But I created a spreadsheet to try and understand this bill and its impact on several investor owners, aside from owner-occupied properties. But my understanding is that this bill, that 210081, only applies to owner-occupied properties and not investor properties. Furthermore, this bill appears to only hit short-term limited lodging, and that's the definition on your website, which are owner-occupied properties rented for less than 90 days. Finally, it looks like the purpose of this bill is to regulate this kind of this area of properties which are an owner is living in. You're creating a new license titled Limited Lodging Operator License, which appears not to apply to investor properties. So again, lots of questions about how this bill is arising as it relates to owner-occupied versus investor properties. I don't know if Sarah or if anyone else wants, perhaps Councilmember Squilla would like to address those questions, and if you have the list of questions in front of you, I should say.
Is that your testimony, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Squilla, would you like to comment?
Yeah, Sarah's still on the line there. I think, Sarah, if you want to...
Sarah, you'd like to comment, Sarah?
Sure. So the specific, type of rental that was just explained, if that's being rented for periods of 30 days or more, that does not fall into limited lodging. It actually doesn't fall into visitor accommodations either, which is what we call hotels in the zoning code. That would simply be a single-family household living use, which is, the same as any single family on the block because it's being rented for 30 days or more at a time. So that should not be affected by this bill. In regards to properties that are, not occupied by a primary residence and are full-time rentals, this bill really doesn't change how we're reviewing them, but it does give us some teeth when it comes to enforcement. Those full-time rentals always should have been zoned as and licensed as hotels, what we would consider visitor accommodations. So they're really only permitted by right in more commercial areas. But like I said, the property that was described should not be impacted. It should just continue to be permitted and reviewed as a single-family household living, and it should obtain a rental license, and that's all that's necessary for that.
Okay, thank you very much for your response, Sarah. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Sherilyn Dressler.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Sherilyn Dressler, and I live in Fairmount, and I wanted to share my story as it relates to my objections regarding Bill 210081 and really the Philadelphia laws in general surrounding short-term rentals or STRs. In short, this bill would make it difficult for many STR hosts to lawfully rent out their properties, would deter tourism, would decrease tax revenue and tourist revenue for Philly, and would put a burden on residents whose options for hosting family and friends are geographically limited. Philadelphia's STR rules need a rewrite. They are Byzantine and onerous, and the only ones who truly profit from them are the hotel industry and large property developers. Little folks like me suffer. My property in Fairmount is a 2-story, 1,023 square foot row home. My typical renters are elderly parents visiting their grandkids in the neighborhood, families wanting a neighborhood feel for their visit, and people in between living arrangements. My current guests are a couple in their 70s whose apartment building was condemned due to fire, and they needed a place to stay while the woman underwent treatment for stage 4 cancer and while they searched for a longer-term solution closer to her medical care. I use Airbnb, and I vet my guests stringently to avoid bookings that could be parties. My neighbors love that I have this property, as they use it too, so loved ones that are visiting can be close by, and they know I am respectful of our collective quality of life. There are no hotel accommodations near Fairmount, and for that matter, many neighborhoods in Philadelphia, besides Center City, which is pricey and inconvenient, especially for those who drive to visit Philly. STRs meet a huge need for tourists and residents alike. Convenient, cost-effective, close by, and everyone benefits from dollars spent by tourists and taxes remitted by agents like Airbnb. I have a commercial activity license, and I remit hotel tax to the city via Airbnb, but I do not qualify for a limited lodging license because my property is not zoned CMX3 or higher. Outside of Center City, most properties used for STRs are not zoned CMX3 or higher. This makes no sense. Bill 210081, combined with the existing STR rules, do not help property owners, many of whom are like me and just trying to support our families with supplemental income. I have spent hours researching the laws, noting that some leave gray areas and some prevent entire neighborhoods of the city from renting STRs legally. This bill may solve one problem, but it leaves 10 others unaddressed, and it should not be this difficult to legally operate an STR in Philadelphia. I have even read Bill 210081 5 times, only to still be unsure as to whether it actually relates to me. We need plain English, common sense STR laws in Philadelphia that protect residents' quality of life, hold property owners accountable for taxes and maintaining neighborhoods' quality of life, and provide convenient and affordable options for all visitors to our great city. Please take this bill and all the other STR laws back to the drawing board. Revisit the zoning laws as they apply to STRs. Require an actual human as a point of contact for all STRs to prevent LLCs from hosting parties. Talk to people like me and get our perspectives. We want to do what is right and legal and support tourism in Philadelphia. Bill 210081 is not the answer to the STR problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Jeff Giangulio.
Hi, everybody. This is Jeff Giangulio, and good morning. So I also live in Fairmount, and I would like to say first and foremost, I'm not against short-term rental regulations and licensing. I would like to see a bill that successfully promotes people's property rights, safety, and the quality of life standards for the community. What I'm really seeking, a lot like the other folks you just heard, is to remove the CMX3 zoning and owner-occupied restrictions and allow folks on this call to help craft a bill that will accomplish what we're all seeking, which from what I've heard is removing parties and trash. If the city doesn't remove these restrictions, I just want to clarify to the council the true reality of the outcomes of the current bill will provide. First and foremost, I don't think it's going to stop parties. Bad actors don't care about licenses. The city has had these zoning restrictions in place for years, and it clearly has not worked to stop parties, so why continue down that path? There's a lot of other ways to accomplish this, like licensing everyone, removing those restrictions, and even doing extremes like requiring noise monitors. Second, and this is a big one, the bill is going to remove around $9 million, I want to clarify that, per year of revenue the city desperately needs. From analysis we've done, 90% of the short-term rentals in the city would not qualify for this license due to these zoning restrictions, therefore removing this revenue stream. Third, the bill will take money out of the taxpaying residents' pockets, putting it right in the large hotels and companies like Sonder. And lastly, the bill is going to reduce the number of visitors to our cities and convention centers. Studies have shown travelers prefer short-term rentals to hotels as of late. As an example, as you just heard folks in Fairmount, from 17th to 31st Street between Spring Garden and Girard, there are only 2 buildings that would qualify, and neither of those provide short-term rentals. So overall, listen, I completely understand it's a difficult issue to navigate and applaud the council in attempting to do so. What I'm requesting is to please remove these zoning and owner-occupied restrictions and push the vote on this bill, allowing folks with vast experience in the industry to craft this with you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Nick Schmidt.
Good morning. My name is Nick Schmid. I am not in favor of Bill 210081. My wife and I both graduated from Drexel University as registered nurses. We work in critical care and have served the Philadelphia community for years. We have 2 kids under the age of 3, and we just purchased a legal duplex this past year, which doesn't meet the CMX3 zoning as well as some other people that have just spoken. We're responsible hosts who closely monitor our guests as well as maintain our property. We regularly clean up trash on our street and interact with neighbors in the parks and community around us. My concerns are related to the additional regulations and licensing being required by hosts and limiting the ability for people to responsibly rent their homes based on this zoning. The income we receive from guests not only goes to our mortgage, allowing us the ability to live in the city close to hospitals we work at. It pays taxes to the city. It pays cleaners above minimum wage, and it allows tourists from out of town to spend money at restaurants and stores. The last 2 guests that I've hosted were in town for funerals that have been postponed due to COVID. I believe there's ways for hosts to continue doing business responsibly without disrupting surrounding neighborhoods and without compromising data and the integrity of the city. I urge you to carefully consider the effects of the limitations and restrictions being proposed and seek that you rework the bill and look towards responsible hosts to reach a successful outcome that benefits both the city and those hosts. As a nurse who had directly cared for countless COVID patients, as well as critically injured gunshot victims in a time when gun violence is at a record high in the city, please realize that the implications of these restrictions could cause us, as well as many other essential workers and upstanding citizens who supplement their income through hosting short-term rentals, to have to relocate and leave neighborhoods that Philly needs us in. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Giovanni Lewin.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Lewin, and I own a few short-term rentals in the city. I just want to start by saying I do not support Bill 210081, essentially because this is the way I provide for my family. We also provide stay to traveling nurses, people who are visiting for their business, people who are visiting for vacations. And again, it's just the zoning that's going to make it very hard for me to be able to provide housing to people like that. Essentially, they're not looking to look for hotels. They're looking to come to places with their family. They're looking to stay in places that they have their own bathroom, they have their own space to themselves. So again, this is something that I'm not in support of because it'll essentially make me lose business, and I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, pay my taxes to the city, and things like that. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Louis J. Baum.
Yes, good morning. I live in West Philadelphia and have for 40 years. I'm a member of the 46th Ward RCO. My purpose today is to discuss the bill from the perspective of protecting, maintaining, and improving life in our residential communities. These remarks are shortened from the written version I submitted. The current law, enacted in 2015, sets a maximum of 180 days rental per year, with over 90 days per year requiring a use permit. As appropriate for an ancillary use of a property, it is oriented toward homeowners who wish to host paid guests on an irregular basis. Irresponsible short-term rental activity can be destructive to both the character and the comfort of an established long-term residential community. Community input to decisions is vital, but unfortunately, the use permit requirement only triggers a community notification if the permit is denied. The proposed bill sets a tighter framework for collecting taxes and registering licensed operators. It also begins to collect information needed to adequately manage use issues resulting from limited term rental use. Some of the provisions are likely to create problems for our communities. Specifically, increasing permitted operations to 365 days per year. This might seem like just an increase, but it's really a qualitative change that seems no longer an ancillary use under the code. Elimination of inclusion of current residents in approval decisions via use permit variance hearings, or even informing nearby residents of actions taken. We are strongly opposed to reducing community input. The streamlined treatment for owner-occupants who rent for 90 days or less is removed. This can differentially impact lower-income people using occasional limited logic to help make ends meet. There are also provisions that are lacking or need to be stronger. We need stronger requirements for operator presence when guests are accommodated. Currently, the owner can be out of state all year because of the simply a requirement for domicile. The 180-day requirement also means that the owner, no one would be around half of the year. Current law contains 12 safety and quality of life zoning provisions which are vital to communities, but require a concerted effort to measure and enforce. More specifics are needed on city department responsibilities and performance requirements, especially for continued enforcement. A statement should be included on reasons and goals for the legislation. A requirement for program evaluation would help gauge effectiveness. A ZBA permit review no doubt adds expense, but here is a case study of why it is vital. This year, our RCO and others were involved in opposing a use variance for a 2-bedroom row home being advertised and used for limited term rental despite having no license, no long-term occupant, and a succession of extremely disruptive guests. All this during COVID, by the way. At this location, there had been frequent noisy late-night and day-long parties involving numerous attendees. The neighbors were unable to get action to control the situation and were understandably angry and frustrated. The owner was finally found and contacted, but the disturbances continued. How was this disaster finally stopped? A belated use permit application was rejected by L&I. The RCOs provided the zoning board with written testimony, several witnesses, and 45 police reports covering loud parties, drunk and disorderly conduct, and other offenses, even a person with a gun. The variance was abandoned, and hopefully this owner will rent or sell the property. Under the proposed bill, there would have been no RCO notification, no neighbor testimony, and the police reports would probably not have come to light. Major recommendations are full-time 360-day operation should not be permitted except in special cases such as legitimate owner-present bed and breakfast operations. These should require community input before approval and rapid response to reported problems. We have several bed and breakfasts in West Philadelphia, and they are excellent community members. In general, requirements for operator presence while guests are residents should be strengthened. This could avoid many of the pitfalls that will otherwise be encountered. Wider community involvement needs to be assured, including notification of requirements and restoration of the use permit to assure community engagement. Unlicensed operators and non-compliance with specific restrictions in the zoning code are serious risks that need to be better addressed in the present bill, including ongoing compliance reviews and identification of responsible departments and contact points. For all the reasons presented herein, we ask that the bill not be progressed as currently written, that the issues identified and addressed both in my verbal testimony and the written document be addressed, and that a means of initial and recurrent community input be assured so that the safety, cohesion, and quiet enjoyment of our neighborhoods and communities is not compromised. We are not opposed to responsible operators of short-term housing, but we must guard our communities against irresponsible situations that are not dealt with and require specific effort to take care of. We stand ready to assist with any specifics for which we might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Jose Nunez.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you, council members. We, as your constituents, are concerned as much as you are. As it stands, I don't support Bill 210081. However, I do agree that we should regulate this industry. I do agree with other operators and other speakers where tax revenue will severely be impacted. I myself, through my experience, I live and operate in Center City, Rittenhouse, where we primarily focus on corporate rental accommodations. Predominantly studio and one-bedrooms. We don't allow more than 3 occupants. We've never had an issue with parties or with trash. We've hosted members from students, medical professionals, actors in Hamilton, Hello Dolly, Cats. Building this business in Philadelphia has been a great experience for myself and my employees. Applying the business knowledge that I learned at Wharton after getting my MBA, I decided to stay in Philadelphia and grow a business. And as a member of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Philadelphia, this is the city where I decided to grow my family and grow my business. Passing this bill would negatively impact me. I have discussed solutions to our concerns with other host operators, and we are confident that working together in partnership with you, we will find solutions. Examples, creating a self-regulating group that would enforce city regulations on violations. Part of this group would also create a 24-hour hotline for residents to call in the event of a party. As well, this group would offer private trash removal service to other hosts. Currently, we have a Facebook group that warns other hosts of potential parties, of these bad actors, and have prevented many parties even before they started. I believe this is a city that fights, and we agree that last 12 months have been quite challenging time. I understand being a fighter myself, as being the 2015 boxing Golden Glove champion for Philadelphia as well as Pennsylvania State. We will win this, not by being against each other, but in collaboration with each other. We are your constituents, we are your neighbors, we are your residents, we are your small businesses, and we're here to help and be of service. I asked and petitioned this hearing for a delay in a vote. I believe that with a few months, 2 to 3, and dedicated effort, we'll have a meaningful conversation with you and start self-regulating the Philadelphia STR community. We are not the cause of the problems, but we are working together and we'll find solutions and continue to make Philadelphia a city that is not just a great place to live, but a great place to do business. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Scott Yesner.
Good morning, council members. My name is Scott Yesner. I'm speaking here today in opposition of Bill 210081. I gave up a career as a litigation attorney to focus on short-term rentals full-time. I've been a short-term rental host and co-host for over 6 years now. And I've seen this industry change substantially over this time period. And I cannot emphasize enough that I am aligned with the council and Councilman Squila that there needs to be some changes made at the legislative level. But I am hopeful that these changes can come from a collaboration between the host community here in Philadelphia and the city council, instead of a bill that will put 90% of hosts out of business. The common threads I'm seeing here are that there's three main issues we're having with short-term rentals. There's excess trash, there's party guests, and then there's the inability to remove party guests once there's an issue. In my 6 years, I'll admit that I've personally experienced all of these problems at my properties when I first started out. But I created systems to solve these, and I won't go into detail about what all of them are, but they include hiring trash personnel, hiring private security, trying to educate the police force on the Innkeepers Act, and that they can actually remove people that aren't tenants from property, using noise monitoring software, and having a 24/7 hotline where neighbors or guests can call at any point to voice any concerns that they're having. With these systems in place, 99% of the issues are resolved before they become issues. Another topic that I think is very important to discuss is the positive impact short-term rentals have had on the city. When families take their children to CHOP, for example, for weeks of treatments, they don't typically want to stay in a hotel. They want something that feels closer to the comforts of home. And they want to deal with someone who's a real understanding person, gets what they're going through, and is going to be going the extra mile to make sure they are comfortable during a difficult time. We all heard about the city using a hotel to house homeless people during the initial months of the pandemic. What a lot of people don't know is that these hotels were not a safe place for families. So where did the city put the families? They put them in my short-term rentals. And if this bill was active at that time, the city would not have been able to use that property to house these people. Ronald McDonald House, which provides discounted rates, deeply discounted rates to families who are in town for medical treatment, also did not accept families because of COVID and still does not accept them. Where do these families go? They go to short-term rentals. And I've hosted numerous people who were referred to me by the Ronald McDonald's House. And if this bill that's currently on the table was active, I would not have been able to host those families. There is a community here in Philly that has been established by short-term rentals. There's a community of hosts, of guests, of service vendors. I've had guests become cleaners, and I've had cleaners become guests. We are collaborative, and we are engaged. If the restrictions in this bill become realized, 90% of this community will disappear. I would ask the council to allow us to be part of the solution rather than a casualty of it. And I appreciate the council members for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Jennifer Jordan.
Hello, and thank you for the time you're taking today to hear my testimony. I spoke a few months ago, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation again. My name is Jen Jordan, and I host over 20 properties in Philadelphia. I started in hosting in 2013 when I was a public school teacher to supplement my income. Since then, I started helping other hosts rent and take care of their homes. It's not an easy task, so extra hands are needed. Hosting is my primary income, and it is my full-time job and passion. I have created a system to get the perfect guest in my home. Over the years, a small fraction of reservations resulted in parties. The small number of disruptions have been removed immediately. I have a strong relationship with many of my neighbors at each property. I have surveillance cameras on site at each home and are in communication with my neighbors should any issues arise. We remove trash weekly or take the trash off-site should there be a surplus of bags. We have outdoor trash cans with secure lids. As you know, trash can be a problem if it doesn't get collected. We all know firsthand, about 1 year ago, we were dealing with an overflow of trash due to complications with pickup due to the pandemic. While I know there are some negligent hosts, I am not one of them. It is entirely possible to host without issues. I was recently informed by a former neighbor of one of my short-term rentals in Fishtown who missed us hosting next door. She said, an occasional loud Airbnb guest is way better than the renters who live there next door. You guys care about the home. Should these new regulations be set in place, 99% of my homes would not qualify. My properties are run and cared for, and the current regulations are abided by. No issues are brought by the community. My family depends on my hosting income. In the coming years, it will be the income that takes us from surviving right now to thriving. Like many small businesses, this is personal. We have been hit hard by COVID, like so many people have, and we are just starting to feel normal again. I'm proud to say I did not fire any employees who helped me over the last year. I was able to keep my team intact. However, as a leader, I'm sure I took one for the team and cut my income to make sure they stayed afloat. My husband, who worked with me as well, had to go back to his career in marketing to help support my family while I took a pay cut. We are bouncing back now, but I would like the opportunity to recover from this pandemic fully. I employ 4 full-time cleaners, assistants, and part-time cleaners. I pay a living wage. I hire local handymen, HVAC repair people, roofers, plumbers, etc. Weeding out the bad apples with this bill will destroy much of the industry in its wake. This will cripple the businesses, livelihood, and relationships I've created through hosting. Please reconsider using an anvil of a bill to kill this ant of a problem. And mind you, this is a big problem. However, it can be done with care. Let's come to the table with some solutions. Let's enforce regulations that exist already and adjust from there. Thank you very much for hearing my testimony.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Hovlane Marcellus.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. First off, I want to start by telling the council what short-term rentals has done for myself, my family, and my community. I've never been out of a job until the pandemic. I'm a veteran, a college graduate. I work for an entertainment company that requires me to travel out of town for days, weeks, and sometimes months at a time. I was forced to rent my space to make ends meet due to lack of work. My family and I have lost pretty much everything during the pandemic and just the overall opportunity to advance in 2020 and 2021. We had to experience a fight or flight type of scenario. Either I make something happen or I lay down and do nothing. If I had not started doing short-term renting out of my apartment, we would be homeless. I'm not a homeowner yet, and I was on track to becoming one before the pandemic. Short-term renting has paid my rent, kept my landlord happy, and allowed me to put food on the table, not only for myself, but for my family as well. I speak with the members of my community, and I asked them how they felt about me doing short-term rentals. They gave me a list of things that they weren't sure of, and I made sure to address them and follow through on everything that I had promised. I screen my guests carefully, and there's never been a party or event in my space. I keep my security cameras running 24/7 to make sure that I keep a close eye on everything. I have great guests. My neighbors have never complained, and our main priority as hosts is safety first, the healthy balance of our community, and just ensuring an overall great experience. Lastly, Airbnb hosts listen to all the concerns of our community. We have support groups that come together and combat most of the issues that arise. I'm an active member in my community, and we host big cleanup days, give away food, toys, and supplies to other families. And I wouldn't have been in a position to give back if I hadn't started doing short-term rentals. We want to be able to be productive members of society, and passing this ordinance would severely impact those that have already have been put in a disadvantage economically and socially. It's imperative that city council members and the community members communicate with one another to come up with something that we can all agree on moving forward. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I hope that we make the right decision on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the clerk please call the next witness?
Chris Carlone.
Good morning, council members and the committee. I wanted to thank you guys for bringing up this issue and taking action on Bill 210081. My name is Chris Carlone. I'm the CEO of a company by the name of Turnify. We've operated a portion of our business in Philadelphia and the surrounding area for the last 5 years. To give a different perspective for housekeeping, we work on behalf of hosts to clean these properties. So unfortunately, we too have seen the wrong end of these many times. One of the greatest parts about what I do is jobs in the city, of which more than 90% of the jobs are currently occupied by single mothers who work during the day to put food on the table. These jobs, might I add, pay on average $22 an hour for a single housekeeper. We take pride in being able to provide these roles, and we love and treat our family as a great opportunity, and we wish to continue these opportunities in a respectful manner. We abide by all employment regulations, including the recent domestic workers bill, and we remit all taxes as required. I really do love the fact that the city is addressing such an important issue here as we attempt to bad apples. However, a blanket ruling such as this would cause undue stress to the upstanding hosts who have paid their dues, abided by every new regulation and tax, and most importantly, negatively affect an entire ecosystem of workers. You see, hosting guests is not just tourists renting an apartment. Behind the scenes, you'll find a home that's cleaned by my team. The trash is taken out by a small business. Maintenance is done by the neighborhood handyman. The laundry is cleaned by a local laundromat. A local Uber driver takes guests to Reading Terminal where they're served by half a dozen local staff members. The list goes on and on. Proceeding with such a ruling would inevitably devastate these local mini economies and would send shockwaves through hundreds or thousands of families throughout the city. It would be heartbreaking to let all of these people down, but the good hosts are here to say that we want to stand with the city and help take care of our city, promoting responsible hosting and the accountability of our less than responsible peers. As an example, if you look at the events on a specific day that have made headlines locally, you'll start to see that there's a trend. In these instances, they typically occur at larger homes via large groups of guests, likely from out of town, that book for only one single night. As cities like Chicago and Nashville, New Orleans, and more, the best way to prevent future issues is to determine the true root cause and take specific action. Within this group that you have before you today, paired with the data from these specific instances, you'll find a plethora of knowledge and information that can help craft a more specific plan together that would stop the problem at the source. We as upstanding operators in the rental space want to help. We can save time, effort, and even further headaches. Mind you, we're experts at many of these practices, from screening guests to party control to unruly guest removal. You name it, you've got expert consultants at the ready. We've already begun to make plans to come together, as Philly always does, and lend all of our knowledge to the city. We'll self-police our community as we've done for years to make it better for our neighbors so that we can continue to support this ecosystem that subsists in part because of us. As a Philly native myself, I'm excited to me and hope we'll be able to continue to offer Philly as a premier destination for years to come. Staff and I ask that you reject this bill so that we can continue to facilitate tourism in the city together as one. Opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Stephen Huntington.
So, my name is Stephen Huntington. I'm here to testify in my role as the co-chairman of the Crosstown Coalition Zoning Committee. The Crosstown Coalition, as most of the council people know, is a group of now 34 civic associations that meets regularly and tries to address cross-neighborhood issues. One of the issues that we have been following for the last 3 or 4 months is Bill 2181, the Airbnb bill, as we call it. I'm going to read a couple of sentences from a 2.5-page letter we sent each of the Rules Committee members, and then digress from that to reflect on what I've heard this morning via the testimony of the various witnesses. The opening sentences of our letter to the Rules Committee say, "The Crosstown Coalition, with misgivings detailed below, supports the passage of Bill 2181, which it regards as a first step towards addressing party house issues presented by Airbnb-type operations in our community. Citizen concerns as to party house issues are not addressed by the bill's 2 major revisions, the creation of a new limited lodging license and the requirement that Airbnb operators use booking agents who must register with the city." It was interesting that Mr. Munez testified calling for a meaningful conversation concerning the implementation of this bill. That is exactly, totally, what has not occurred in the conversation between the Crosstown and the city regarding this bill. Let me give you a chronology of our efforts. On March 4th, representatives from 15 neighborhoods met and put together an 8-point memorandum. On March 8th, that 8-point memorandum was sent out to each of the Rules Committee members. On March 9th, the first Rules Committee hearing was held, at which Elle and I testified for 29 minutes, but did not address a single one of the 8 points in the memorandum. On March 10th, March 12th, March 16th, we left voicemails and emails with Elle and I, hoping that we could begin to have a conversation regarding our suggestions. On March 16th, 17th, 23rd, 25th, 26th, and 29th, there were emails and conversations back and forth to Councilman Squilla and his staff in which we were requesting that he intervene to get a response from the city. And I must say that Councilman Squilla's staff and the councilman himself deserve kudos for their diligence in trying to set up what Mr. Munez called a meaningful conversation. On April 20th, the council member was able to convene a meeting to discuss party house issues after 2 dates were scrubbed, and it was attended by 3 city representatives from Community Affairs, the Law Department, and the Mayor's Office. On April 21st, we sent a follow-up memorandum confirming that the Mayor's Office had agreed to provide 2 information requests, one regarding hotel licenses and the second addressing the need for party house contacts at 2 a.m. The next day, the Mayor's Office replied, and I quote, "We will work internally and with Councilman Squilla on ways to best address the 2 a.m. problem. which, as I'm sure you are aware, is significantly more than simply party houses at short-term rentals. On April 28th, the mayor's office representative provided a memo on the hotel issue, but not on the party house issue. On May 3rd, we threw up our hands and sent back to all the interested parties a suggested bill revision with red line language. We never received a response until about 3 o'clock yesterday, when we received an amended version of the bill, which of course doesn't address our concerns. Basically, our concerns are that the bill should make it possible for citizens to enforce party house complaints. And the only way to do that is to have publicly available information as to who's running an improperly managed house. We've heard from 8 or 9 witnesses. Many of them have been responsible, most of them, all of them, have been responsible Airbnb operators, and they're not the problem. It's the minority of Airbnb operators who present the problem. Having said that, it is a real problem, and it is a problem that this bill does not address. Having heard the testimony this morning, it seems to me that one thing council could be considering is to put together a task force, invite interested citizens to come and look at suggestions as to how to improve Airbnb regulations. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment real quick?
Mark Squilla.
Thank you, and thank you, Robert, for testifying. And I know it's been a challenge as our communications has been a struggle with this bill, but I think one thing that was added was a 24-hour number to be part of that was part of the amendment. The other is, and we agree with you as far as the stakeholders to meet with the administration and L&I as the crafting of regulations are done in this bill. It's important to realize certain public information and certain personal information, at least from the law department's perspective, it can be a challenge to be able to collect and then display. So there are some legal challenges with that, but I would be happy to support an ongoing effort with the stakeholders and with the administration as these regulations are written to be a part of that process. So thank you for your testimony, and looking forward to continuing as we move forward with this bill.
Thank you very much, Councilman Squilla. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Julia Choseed.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Julia Choseed, a long-term 5-star Airbnb host and resident in the Brewerytown Strawberry Mansion neighborhood, where there is no CMX-owned properties in this area. This bill is extremely harmful to both me as a business owner and to my local neighborhood economy. As a resident and Airbnb host in this area, the neighborhood survives on small businesses. Every single business in this area is family-owned, and more often than not, Black-owned. We also have a unique and special story to most of these businesses. For example, Josh from Spot Burger started his community fridge and offered to feed families in need during COVID. Monkey and the Elephant, our local coffee shop, is a nonprofit that employs former foster youth. These are just 2 stories of what makes this neighborhood special and what brings travelers here and have them fall in love with it. There are no hotels. There's local neighbors hosting visitors, sharing what makes this place so special. All of my guests comment on how much they love to have a local host who goes above and beyond to make their trip special. Of the hundreds of stays I've hosted over the last 5 years, I have not had a single disruptive guest by vetting and rule setting and being close by. This is the business I created, and too many people, especially small, passionate business owners like myself, would be harmed by this bill. Thank you.
And finally, we have Robert Nunez. Robert Nunez.
Yes, hello?
Hi, you may
Can
begin.
you hear me?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I was on an earpiece. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak on this platform. I'm very proud as an owner, operator, and host since 2013 to hear so many of my colleagues, most of them which I don't know, but all of us have the same mission and the same feeling about that, the short-term rental industry, mid-term rental industry, limited lodging, whichever title you want to give it, accommodating people who are in the city, from the city, or coming to the city for whatever their various reasons are, is a passion, and sometimes even more than a passion, it's actually just something that's necessary and needed. As many of the operators here and hosts have testified, it's not just about hosting people to make some extra money and then, go and spend it as you choose to, but it's actually the lifeline and the bloodline to many of these families maintaining their lives in order. During Hurricane Sandy, we've been operating for a while now. During Hurricane Sandy, many people that were ravished in other islands, I think most of them from Puerto Rico, were shipped to our units with FEMA. They were sent to Philadelphia through FEMA and Red Cross, and they didn't have anywhere to place these individuals and these families, and they wound up staying at our accommodations. Many of these families actually wound up staying in Philadelphia, period. And now they're residents. Two of them that I know are homeowners, and they've continued to thrive here in the city. We also employ a team of house cleaners, maintenance men, handymen, individuals who do the trash service, property managers, and they are doing very well for themselves because during the pandemic and during COVID, which affected so many of us so terribly, we didn't miss a beat. Like one of the operators earlier was mentioning, we took a pay cut on our end to make sure that they didn't have to have a misstep on theirs. And it was a very good thing to know that during the time when so many people were facing such difficult situations, they were actually able to at least not have to worry about where their bread and butter was going to come from or keep the roof over their head. I understand the part about party houses. I understand that because I'm an owner here and I live in a residence, and if somebody threw a party next to me, a disruptive event, it would bother me and my children as well. But so do regular residents from the city who throw unruly events and parties. And when something like that happens, what do? The neighbors call the police come, they rectify the situation. Having a short-term rental property or limited lodging property is not based on on creating a space for people to do events. If people want to have an event or a party, they're going to do it whether they rent their space or they're going to do it at their friend, cousin's, or sister's house. It doesn't stop the individuals from doing it. It doesn't also encourage them because the difference is being an operator, you can set the rules and the guidelines of what you allow and what you don't allow, and you can enforce them immediately. That's very different than a local person saying, this is what we're going to allow. If most of the people here are from Philadelphia or live in the city, you understand that at any given moment you can make a right or left turn and there's a rope across the street and there's a block party taking place. Or there's sometimes parties that nobody even knows about. So it's uncomforting to see how they label short-term rentals or limited lodging as party houses. It happens. We're aware of that. And we as responsible hosts and operators take it seriously because we know that a few bad apples can create a disruptive environment, which is probably one of the reasons why this bill has been, somewhat pushed forward a bit. But we do have at least the opportunity to stop it. We notify the people prior to arrival what we allow, we don't allow. We take our precautions. We have surveillance in many cases. And when it does ever take place, we take immediate action. That's responsibility. It's not just individuals putting up a place, leaving, and not caring about what's going on in the community. Businesses do well because of the short-term rentals that we have in the area. They, instead of going just to Central City, not to take anything away from it, but instead of just going to Central City, they actually benefit and shop, live, spend time within the community. And that helps the local businesses during very difficult times. I don't see a reason why they would pass a blanket bill, or like one of the operators said, an ant bill to an ant problem. I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor of this bill just being passed so indiscriminately like this. I think that a meaningful conversation, which seems to be a premise in this conversation, would be great to really consider
the impact, because as the gentleman from Turnify said, there is an existing ecosystem that exists now because of this industry. Nurses and doctors, people who are displaced through fires. A gentleman I know who was a homeowner was displaced 2 days ago from a fire in the East Germantown neighborhood and is looking to lodge with us for 120 days while they get their life back in order. He couldn't stay in the hotel. He has too many children. He has a large family. It doesn't work for him. There's an ecosystem that exists, and we as the host and operators understand our responsibility in it. We want to participate in helping maintain this ecosystem to be healthy for the residents, for the city, for the revenue of the city, for the businesses, the local businesses, and for ourselves. And I think that this is a good step that we're having this conversation. It's clear that we care because there's people on the phone expressing their stories from all across the city, and I hope that we can push this forward in a meaningful way that positively affects everyone, not that just wipes everybody out. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Robert Nunez.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everybody, for your testimony today. And I know it's been a challenge for some folks. As we hear, we have some of the industry folks that are a little upset about what is going on. We also have some of the community folks a little upset about what's going on. We're not doing enough to enforce some of these bad behaviors. But what happens during this process and when the sausage is made, it gets very complicated in trying to get input from all sides to have legislation that is workable. We know there's still regulation process in place that will be done through L&I and the administration that we have a chance to participate in. But also the one individual who spoke about renting their property and that, since they had lost their job, they are able to rent their property as an Airbnb. That would not be affected by this bill. You would still be able to do that with the bill. The other issues as far as people having a great neighbors and are really appreciative of their Airbnbs on their blocks and are supportive of them, that we heard from a lot of great operators. There's several challenges here. And as we're talking about affordability of the city of Philadelphia, we're looking at rentals as part of our affordability process. And what we're seeing a lot of times with Airbnbs is how they drive up the rate and where people are paying higher rates to live short term. And I understand that the operators are making additional dollars on that, but it would still be beneficial to the city of Philadelphia to have affordable rentals to people to be able to live in those communities also. And then if your community does support these type of venues and Airbnbs, like everybody says, and they're very welcomed in their communities, it's still a process to do that. It's not banned. You would have to get a variance and it'd be approved through the zoning board, and therefore you operate a legal Airbnb that way. So, there are other opportunities to work in this process. We'll continue the conversations as regulations are written. This does not go into effect until April of next year. So we still have a while before, to fix things and possibly look at unintended consequences. So happy to work with everybody on the process, and we'll continue working with the administration and all the stakeholders as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Mark Squilla. Is there anyone else here to testify whose name has not yet been called? Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, I want to thank all the panelists and witnesses for their participation today. We value your input and now invite all panelists and witnesses to please disconnect from the meeting before we go into our public meeting. We will now pause the proceedings briefly as multiple participants leave the hearing. Council support. Is everyone disconnected?
Yes, Council Chair.
Thank you very much. This concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bills before this committee. We will now convene the public meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair, present.
Councilmember David O.
Good morning, Chairman and colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'm here.
Councilmember Bobby Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Mr. Chairman, I am present.
And Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
Present.
Thank you. Thank all of you for your attendance. We will now start our public meeting. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 200713. Councilman Squilla, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologize, but I offer an amendment to bill number 200713. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 200713 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 200713 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries and the amendment to bill number 200713 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilmember Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 200713 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the bill number 200713 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 200713 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210425.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210425 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended. I submit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Brian O'Neill seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the bill number 210425 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210204.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer amendment to bill number 210204. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210204 be approved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. The chair notes for the record that Councilman Bobby Heenan seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210204 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210204 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the bill number 210204 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman David O. seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210204 as amended be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Spiller for a motion on bill number 210362.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the bill number 210362 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman David O. seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210362 be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Spiller for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210081.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer the amendment to bill number 210081. A copy of the amendments have been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210081 be approved.
Second. Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Bobby Heenan seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210081 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Spiller for a motion on bill number 210081 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the bill number 210081 as amended be approved from this committee with a favorable recommendation of further.
Excuse me, Mr. President?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think it was mentioned earlier when Planning Commission was testifying that I have an amendment to this bill also.
Council member was added with our amendment.
Oh, it was? Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
I didn't know that. Appreciate it.
You got it.
So we'll go back to.
I would say that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the bill number 210081 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman David O. seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210081 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Spiller for a motion on bill number 210225.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing and public meeting on bill number 210225.
Whoa, not yet. So let's go back.
Councilmember Johnson, or Mr. Chair, that is a motion to recess that bill, so it will be heard at the next hearing of the Rules Committee on June 15th.
Okay, understood. Go ahead, Councilman Mark Spiller.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the public hearing and public meeting on bill number 210225 stand in recess until Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 at 9:30 a.m.
Second.
The chair recognizes Councilman David O. for seconding the motion. Has been moved and properly seconded that the public hearing and public meeting of this committee on bill number 210225 be recessed until Tuesday, June the 15th of 2021 at 9:30 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. That the public hearing and public meeting on bill number 210225 will stand in recess until June the 15th of 2021 at 9:30 a.m., at which time we will reconvene on Microsoft Teams. This concludes the meeting. I want to thank all my colleagues for being present and available, but also I want to thank colleagues, Councilman Mark Squilla, as well as Councilman Brian O'Neill for their work on their legislation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes the meeting. This concludes the business before the Rules Committee today. Everyone have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
You're welcome.